Rain poured from the red skies of planet Zivera, but the war drums had already gone silent. Smoke rose from broken towers. Scattered fires lit the night. The unexpected war between humans and the Varelians had ended, but not in victory. Not in defeat. It ended in confusion. Private Dean Marshall didn't plan to survive. His squad was gone, burned, melted, swallowed by strange weapons he couldn't understand. But somehow he was still breathing. Limping through mud and wreckage with blood on his uniform and a burning pain in his ribs, Dean followed the only light he could see, one flickering beacon at the edge of a ruined alien temple. He didn't know who set the beacon, friend or enemy. But he was out of water, out of ammo, and almost out of hope. As he dragged his body across shattered stone, something moved in the shadows. He froze. A tall, thin shape stepped into view. It had long legs, silver skin, and glowing violet eyes. Varelian. Dean's hand twitched toward his sidearm, though it was empty. The alien didn't attack. She looked just as broken as he felt. Her left arm hung limp. Her silver dress was torn. She was breathing fast, frightened, but not of him. No, she seemed terrified of being seen. Then she whispered, "Don't scream. They'll hear you." Dean's voice was cracked. "Who will?" She stepped closer, trembling. "My people, they'll kill you. And me, if they see I didn't finish you." Dean staggered back but didn't run. Something about the girl's eyes held him. Not hatred, not anger, it was fear. Desperate, real fear. And something else, guilt. "You're Varelian," he said. She nodded once. "But I didn't want this war." Dean frowned. "You're not a soldier." "No," she said. Was a healer, but I was forced to come here. Forced to fight." Dean didn't trust her, not yet. But his knees buckled. She rushed to him before he hit the ground. "I don't want to die," he said, barely above a whisper. She caught him under the arms, struggled to lift him. Her body was warm, soft, not what he expected. She dragged him into the ruins and pulled aside a hidden panel in the wall. Inside was a small chamber with blankets, dried herbs, and a glowing orb that gave soft light. "Here," she said. "Rest. I'll help." He was too weak to argue. She placed something under his head and sat beside him. Carefully, she peeled back his uniform. Her fingers glowed faintly as they moved over his wounds. Dean winced. "Your people tortured mine." She didn't meet his eyes. "I know." "Why are you helping me?" "Because you're still human," she said. "And I've seen what happens when we stop being kind." Hours passed. The storm outside raged, but the small room stayed warm. Dean opened his eyes. The pain was less. The girl was still beside him, watching. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Talira." He nodded. "Dean." He watched her work, her hands glowing with energy as they stitched his torn flesh. But then she did something strange. She leaned close and placed her lips gently against his skin, right above the worst wound on his side. Dean stiffened. "What are you doing?" Talira gasped. "What's your mouth doing?" He blinked. "My mouth? I wasn't doing anything." "No," she said, flushing a strange shade of blue. "I meant mine. I forgot your species doesn't heal through bonding contact." Dean's heart raced. "You kissed my wound." "In Varelian tradition," she said nervously, "it helps carry the energy deeper." "I didn't mean." "It's okay," he said quickly. "It just surprised me." Her hands shook slightly. "Do you want me to stop?" Dean looked down. At his side, the skin was no longer cracked and bleeding. It was healing fast, faster than any human treatment. He shook his head. "No, please, don't stop." She nodded, then bent again. Her touch was gentle. Strange warmth flowed through him, something more than physical, a deep calm, a strange connection, like her energy was merging with his. Not just body, but something deeper. He closed his eyes. For the first time since landing on this cursed world, he wasn't afraid. In the ashes of the battlefield, metallic eyes watched through the rain, silent, calculating, and they had seen where the human vanished. Dean didn't know it yet, but saving him had placed Talira in grave danger, and neither of them could guess how close the next enemy truly was. Dean woke to a soft hum vibrating through the floor. It wasn't the wind this time, it wasn't thunder. Something mechanical was moving outside the temple ruins. Talira's eyes were already open. She sat near the entrance, tense, her hands glowing faintly in the dim light. Her back was straight. Her breathing sharp. He whispered, "What is it?" She didn't look at him. A scout drone. It's searching the ruins. It shouldn't be here this soon. Dean struggled to sit up. They're tracking me. She finally turned. No, they're tracking me. A cold chill ran through his spine. Why? I disobeyed, she said softly. I was ordered to leave no survivors. I helped you instead. That's treason. Dean narrowed his eyes. You're risking your life for me? Talira hesitated. I couldn't let another human die in pain. I've seen too much already. I've felt it. The screams still echo inside me. He touched her wrist gently. You don't sound like the enemy. Talira smiled sadly. That's why I'll be killed if they find us. A sharp burst of static filled the air. Then a beam of red light cut across the temple wall just above them. Dust fell from the ceiling. The drone was scanning the ruins. Dean's voice dropped lower. We need to move, fast. I know a way out, she whispered, standing quickly. But you're still hurt. I'll run if I have to, Dean said, gripping the wall to rise. Lead the way. Talira pulled a heavy slab aside, revealing a narrow tunnel beneath the floor. She motioned for Dean to crawl in. He hesitated. Where does it go? Down, she said, to the underground channels. They were used before the war. Safe, hidden. Dean nodded once and slid inside. Talira followed, pulling the slab closed. Above them, darkness swallowed them, lit only by her soft violet glow. They moved slowly, knees scraping on stone, silence their only protection. Every sound, every breath felt louder in the narrow crawl space. The further they went, the colder it became. Finally, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Cracked tiles, metal piping, and a broken water system ran through the walls. A half-buried hatch lay ahead, locked in rust. Dean collapsed beside it. Is this your plan? Talira touched the panel beside the hatch. Her fingers glowed brighter. The door groaned open, steam hissing from its edges. She turned to him. Once we're through here, they won't find us for a while. But it's not comfortable, and it's not clean. I don't care, he said. If I can breathe and hide, that's enough. Inside the hatch was a tunnel of rotting insulation, dripping moisture and alien fungus. Talira climbed in first, not complaining. Dean followed, holding his breath as mold scraped his hands. The crawl turned into a steep slope, leading into a room with broken lights and cracked metal benches. It looked like a forgotten shelter or control room from decades ago. Talira slumped to the floor, exhausted. We'll be safe here for a little while, maybe a day, maybe less. Dean wiped the sweat from his forehead. Thank you. She didn't respond at first. She was watching him. Eyes flickering, almost nervous. He tilted his head. What? I've never touched a human before, she said softly. You've touched me plenty in the last day. I mean not for healing, she said, then lowered her eyes. You're warm, even when injured, your mouth, your voice. It affects me in strange ways. Dean shifted awkwardly. You said something about Varelians bonding through contact? Yes, she whispered, when I used my lips on your wound. It created a link. I felt part of your pain, and part of your peace. Dean leaned back, confused but curious. What kind of link? Talira crawled closer, hands shaking. If I do it again, the bond grows stronger. But it's forbidden with humans. Why? Because humans, they resist us. They change us. Dean smiled a little. Is that so bad? It is, she said. Because when the bond grows, I won't be able to hide from you. You'll feel my thoughts, my guilt, my wants. Dean looked into her glowing eyes. And if I wanted that? Talira gasped softly. You shouldn't. But what if I did? She crawled even closer, her breath trembling. Then she did it again, placed her lips gently on his chest, over the newly healed scar. The warmth returned. But stronger now. Dean's head buzzed. Her fingers brushed his jaw. Her forehead touched his. Images flashed in his mind, not his own. Her memories, her sadness, her pain when she saw human children cry, her rebellion, her loneliness. He didn't understand it all, but he felt it. She pulled back, eyes wide. You saw, she whispered. Didn't you? Dean nodded slowly. Yeah, I saw. And from far above, deep in the sky, a Varelian warship adjusted its orbit, now scanning for both of them. The air inside the shelter felt heavier now, not from the moisture or decay, but from something between them. Dean sat silently against the metal wall, his heart still racing. He had seen things that didn't belong to him, her memories, her pain, her longing. Talira had moved to the far corner of the room, hugging her knees, silent and tense. Her skin glowed less now, like she was trying to hide even from herself. Dean didn't know what to say. He had never felt something so strange before, so intense. It wasn't love, it wasn't lust, it was something deeper. A thread between their thoughts. A whisper in his mind that wasn't his own voice. He spoke softly. You don't have to run away from me. I'm not running, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm trying to hold myself together. Dean watched her. That bond you made, it's dangerous? Talira looked up, her violet eyes flickering. Yes, it's permanent. You'll feel parts of me, even when I'm not with you. And if I do it again, the connection deepens. Dean leaned forward. What happens if it deepens? She hesitated. If it grows strong enough, I won't be able to hide anything from you. Not even my instincts. He blinked. Instincts? Talira looked away. Varelian bonding wasn't designed for peace. It was created long ago when our kind needed to survive in wild places. It lets us protect someone completely, but it also binds us emotionally, physically. Dean's breath slowed. You'd be tied to me? Yes, she whispered. And the others would sense it. They would destroy us both. A moment of silence hung between them. Then Dean asked, Why'd you do it the first time? She blinked. The bond? Yes. Talira held his gaze for a long moment. Then she said, Because you were dying. And I was tired of letting good people die. He stood slowly and walked toward her. She didn't move. She didn't back away. I'm not afraid of you, Dean said. She looked up at him. You should be. Why? Her voice cracked. Because I'm already changing. Suddenly, the lights above them flickered. A deep rumble echoed through the floor. The warship in orbit had begun a descent. Its engines vibrated the walls of the old structure. Talira stood up fast. They found us. Dean's jaw clenched. Options? She grabbed her small pack and opened a side panel behind the wall. There's an old maintenance shaft. It's tight, but it leads closer to the surface, away from their scans. Dean followed her into the crawl space again. The tunnel twisted and climbed. Pipes dripped on their backs. Crushed bones lay buried in some corners, long forgotten. When they reached the top, the hatch was jammed. Talira pushed. It didn't budge. Dean grunted and shoved beside her. Finally, it popped open with a screech, and cold wind rushed inside. They were near the edge of a cliff high above a jungle canyon. Black clouds swirled above, and the shadow of the Varelian ship passed over them. Like a dark moon, Talira cursed in her own language. They've deployed hunters. Dean scanned the sky. Flying drones? No, something worse. They're called Sithers. Biotech blood seekers. They smell emotion and track movement. A sound echoed through the air, clicking wings, chittering. Shrieks. Dean pulled Talira close behind a moss-covered rock. How do we hide from something that smells feelings? Talira whispered quickly. Breathe slow. No fear. No sudden thoughts. He stared. How do I control my thoughts? You don't, she said. I do. She reached out, placed her hands on the sides of his face, and brought her forehead against his. Her breath was warm. Her glow returned. A pulse spread from her hands into his chest. Dean's vision blurred. He could feel her again, but now deeper. Not memories, feelings, her heartbeat, her calm, her control. She was taking his panic and pulling it into herself. She whispered softly, "Let me take it." "Don't resist." Dean exhaled. His heartbeat slowed. His fear dulled. Like her energy was pushing waves of peace into his mind. Above them, a winged shadow passed close. The Sither's spiny legs curled downward, scanning. Its tongue whipped. The air like a serpent. Dean stayed still. Even his thoughts became quiet. The creature hovered for several seconds, then sped away with a shriek. Dean let out a long breath. Talira slumped against him, drained. "You okay?" he asked. "I absorbed too much," she said, her voice weak. "But you're safe." Dean held her steady as she sat down. He looked at her closely. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her skin was dimming again. "You're hurting yourself," he said. She nodded. "That's the price of bonding. It protects you, but it empties me." Dean sat beside her, silent. He didn't know what was happening between them, but he knew one thing now: Talira wasn't just an alien. She was risking everything, for him, and far below, in the jungle's edge, 3 more Sithers took flight, each now marked with Dean's scent. Time was running out. The jungle below looked endless, thick green trees, strange glowing plants, and shadows that never stayed still. The Sithers were still hunting. Their cries echoed through the canyons, louder and closer. Dean helped Talira down the rocky path. She stumbled more than once. Her strength hadn't returned. "You shouldn't have taken that pain," Dean said, watching her carefully. Talira smiled faintly. "If I didn't, you would have panicked. The Sither would have smelled it. We'd be dead." "You keep saving me," Dean muttered. "You don't even know me." She looked up at him. "That's not true anymore. I know your heartbeat, your thoughts. I've felt your pain, and you've seen mine." Dean paused. "So what are we now?" Talira blinked. "I don't know." They didn't have time to think. A loud crack split the air behind them. The jungle trees burst apart as something crashed down into the forest. Dean turned. A black shape with wings folded tight dropped from the sky like a spear. "Run," Talira whispered. "Don't stop." Dean grabbed her hand and pulled her forward. They sprinted through vines, leapt over fallen trunks, ducked under strange branches that moved like tentacles. Behind them, the Sither screeched, its claws ripping through leaves. It wasn't flying now. It was chasing them on foot. 4 spindly legs, a long tail that twitched like a whip, and a mouth too wide to belong on anything alive. Talira stumbled again, and Dean pulled her up. "You're not fast enough like this." She breathed hard. "Leave me." "Not happening." They pushed through a tight wall of ferns and dropped into a hollow pit filled with strange mushrooms that glowed blue. Dean grabbed a branch and pulled it across to hide them. He held her close. Her face was against his chest. Her breath was warm, fast, shaky. Above, the Sither stopped, sniffed the air. Its long claws scraped stone. Then silence. Dean didn't move, didn't breathe. Talira reached for his face again. "I need to calm your thoughts." But this time, Her hand trembled too much to control her glow. Dean gently cupped her face. Then let me try. He kissed her forehead softly. She froze. Her eyes closed. Then a wave of energy moved between them, different this time. Not pain, not healing. Peace. Her glow returned steady and strong. She exhaled slowly. Your mouth, it works. Dean grinned faintly. I have my ways. Talira blinked, breathless. Now I understand why humans kiss. Not the usual time for romance, Dean said. It's not romance, she whispered. It's something else. Your mouth sends signals, heat, calm, strength. It makes me feel like I'm not alone. Dean leaned closer. You're not. They sat in silence until the screech of the zither vanished into the distance. Eventually, Dean helped her up again, and they followed a stream deeper into the jungle. The path led them to a strange ruin, one that even Talira didn't recognize. A small door stood at the base of a collapsed structure. Symbols glowed on its surface, none of them Varelian. Dean stepped forward. What is this place? Talira looked confused. This isn't from my people. It's older. Much older. She placed her hand on the door, and it responded with a pulse of golden light. The door slid open silently, revealing a room full of strange machines and star maps floating in the air. They stepped inside. The air was dry and clean, untouched by the war. Strange lights ran through the walls. Dean looked around. This isn't military. No, Talira said. It's a sanctuary, pre-war, from a time when this world was shared. Shared? Between many species, she said softly. Before conquest, before cruelty. One of the machines beeped softly. A voice spoke, not in English or Varelian, but something deeper, like music inside the brain. Dean held his head. What is that? Talira gasped. It's recognizing your DNA. He turned to her. My what? It thinks you're a key. A chosen one, or part of some old system. The sanctuary is waking up. Suddenly, one of the maps zoomed in on Earth. A line connected it to Zivora. Then multiple images began forming: ships, archives, creatures locked in stasis. Talira stared in shock. This place stored something powerful. Dean looked at the display. What if they come for this? They will, she said. Now that we're here, they'll follow. Dean turned to her. Then we defend it. Talira nodded. But inside her eyes, something had changed. Fear and hope. She stepped closer and touched his lips with her fingers. You must kiss me again, she whispered. Dean blinked. You sure? Her voice was steady now. The bond must complete. If we are going to stand together, we must become one. Dean took her hand, placed it over his heart, and whispered, Then show me how. As their lips met, the room glowed, brighter than ever before. Somewhere deep in the jungle, a Varelian general received a signal coordinates and a warning. The human and the traitor had awakened something that was never meant to be touched. The kiss didn't just connect them, it lit something inside the ancient sanctuary. Lights in the ceiling shifted to gold and violet. Holographic beams stretched down from above, wrapping around Dean and Talira like soft vines of energy. The old machines that had slept for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, suddenly stirred, releasing low hums that vibrated through the walls. Dean gasped as warmth surged through his chest. Talira pulled back, her fingers still pressed gently to his cheek. Did you feel that? He asked, blinking rapidly. She nodded. The sanctuary accepted us both. You've completed the Varelian human bond. And this place recognizes that connection. Dean looked around. What is this place? Talira moved toward the large star map at the center of the room. It's more than a sanctuary. I think it's a failsafe, a shelter for those who broke the rules, built by a long-lost alliance. Dean frowned. An alliance between who? Aliens, she said. All kinds. Including humans long ago, maybe before Earth even knew. Suddenly, one of the glowing symbols turned red. A loud "Ping" echoed from a side chamber. Dean turned sharply, hand reaching for a weapon he no longer carried. Talira moved quickly, stepping to a panel. A screen opened, showing an orbit map, one large red dot hovering above the jungle. "The Varelian warship. They're coming," she said. Dean stared at the alert. "They tracked us through the bond?" "No, not anymore," Talira said. "This place shields us, but the signal we triggered, it reached them. Now they know this site exists." Dean's jaw clenched. "Then they won't stop until they control it, or destroy it." Talira nodded. "And if they destroy it, everything that was hidden here, all this knowledge, all these old alliances will be lost forever." Dean stepped closer to the glowing control ring. The machine responded to his presence, lighting up under his touch. "Can we defend it?" Talira hesitated. "Yes, if we activate the defenses, but they're not simple. They're bonded to the sanctuary's chosen protectors." Dean raised an eyebrow. "You mean us?" She nodded slowly. "Together, we might be strong enough." Dean smirked faintly. "Then let's give them a fight." He followed her deeper into the structure. The inner walls were covered with old armor, strange organic tech that shimmered like silk but hummed like machines. Talira stopped in front of two resting pods. "These are for bonded pairs," she explained. "One Varelian, one other. They were made to merge instinct and strategy." Dean looked at the curved pod. "You want me to lie in that thing? If we're going to defend this place, we'll need more than just running and hiding." Dean sighed. "All right, let's do it." They lay in the pods. The soft material wrapped around them like water turning solid. Light flooded their minds. Thoughts merged, memories twisted and braided into something new. Dean saw flashes of Talira's past, her childhood among the healers, her quiet rebellion. The day she was forced to watch innocent humans burn under orders she couldn't disobey. He felt her guilt and her strength. Talira saw Earth through Dean's eyes, his training days, his brother's jokes, the sunsets he missed more than anything. She felt his anger, his loneliness, his strange, quiet bravery. Then came the pulse, the bond completed. Sanctuary responded. The walls glowed like a living creature. Symbols flowed across the floor. A new doorway opened, one that had been locked until now. Dean stepped out of the pod. He didn't feel tired anymore. He felt alive, strong. Something had changed in his blood. Talira walked beside him, her skin glowing brighter than before. The new chamber held two suits armor, elegant and smooth, like it had grown instead of been built. Dean touched the human-sized one. It clamped around him, sealing at the joints, light flowing over the surface. It felt weightless but full of power. Talira did the same. Her suit responded to her touch instantly, adapting to her body like a second skin. They turned to each other. "Are you ready?" she asked. Dean nodded. "Let's defend what matters." The sanctuary ceiling opened. Outside, the jungle shook as drop pods smashed into the ground. Varelian troopers, in dark armor, marching forward. Scythers flew above them, screeching at the sky. But they weren't ready for what emerged from the light. Dean and Talira rose from the sanctuary entrance. Side by side, energy shimmering from their armor. The machines had awakened. And for the first time in centuries, the jungle would witness something new. A human and an alien girl, standing as one, and nothing was going to tear them apart again. The Varelian soldiers moved like a wave, cold, silent, and unstoppable. Black armored troopers surrounded the sanctuary from every side. The jungle trees were crushed under their boots. Scyther scouts flew above, shrieking in patterns, sending signals back to the warship in orbit. From the command ship, General Corex watched calmly. "Send the shock units," he ordered. "Take the traitor alive. The human is expendable." On the ground, the first shock team advanced. But then the light shifted. The sky above the sanctuary cracked with violet and gold energy. Then two glowing shapes stepped forward from the ruins. Dean and Talira stood tall, side by side, wrapped in living armor that shimmered with every breath. The machines had changed them. They weren't just wearing suits, they were part of something older. Something stronger. The moment the Varelian soldiers saw them, they hesitated. Talira's voice rang out, calm and clear. "This world is no longer yours." One soldier fired. Dean moved faster than human reflex. His gauntlet raised, and a pulse of energy shot out, catching the blast mid-air. It exploded in a burst of harmless light. Another soldier tried to flank them, but vines from the sanctuary wrapped around his legs and yanked him into the earth. Dean stared at his arm. "That wasn't me," Talira nodded. "The sanctuary is defending us too." The Sithers screamed and dove down. Dean grabbed Talira's hand. "Ready?" she smiled. "Let's show them what happens when a human bonds with the Forbiddens." They charged into the chaos. Dean moved like lightning. The armor responded to his thoughts. When he ducked, it anticipated. When he punched, it amplified. He slammed into two Varelian troopers, sending them flying into the trees. Talira danced between attackers. Her body shimmered, slipping through strikes like liquid. She waved her hand and vines burst from the earth, slamming enemies into the ground. One Sither swooped down toward Dean. He turned, clenched his fist, and a shockwave blasted from his palm. The creature tumbled through the air, wings folding. Before crashing into the canyon below, Talira pressed her palm to the ground. The earth cracked, swallowing a full squad of soldiers into a glowing pit of light. More troops rushed in. Energy blasts filled the air. Dean shielded Talira. Her back was to his, moving like they were two parts of one mind. He wasn't just fighting anymore. He was protecting her. And she was protecting everything. Still, more forces dropped in. Too many. For every wave they crushed, another came. Talira breathed heavily. They won't stop. Corax will keep sending more. Dean's jaw tightened. Then we need to end this. Fast. From deep inside the sanctuary, another signal pulsed louder now. A console lit up in the air behind them. The machines were offering something. A final option. Talira turned. "They want to release the core." Dean looked at her. "What's the core?" She stepped closer to the glowing panel. Energy older than any weapon. It could level this entire jungle or power a fleet for 100 years. Dean frowned. "If we release it, we could stop Corax, but we might not survive." Dean glanced at her. Her eyes weren't afraid anymore. He reached out, took her hand. "We do it together." She placed her other hand on the core panel. Dean did the same. The lights turned white. A deep voice, not human, not Varelian, spoke inside their minds. "Bond complete. Final defense permitted." The ground shook. From beneath the sanctuary, a great tower rose covered in vines and metal. The top cracked open, revealing a massive orb of raw energy. Above, the warship tried to pull away, but it was too late. The core fired. A beam of pure light shot into the sky, hitting the ship dead center. The blast rippled across the clouds, splitting the storm. Fire erupted in orbit. Corax's ship cracked in two before falling into the atmosphere. The soldiers on the ground froze. Some dropped their weapons. Others ran. Dean staggered. Talira caught him. "You okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I think I just fired a sun out of my chest," he said, smiling weakly. Talira laughed, tears in her eyes. "You did more than that." The machines began to power down. The glow faded. The armor unwrapped from their bodies gently, like fog rolling away. Dean and Talira stood in the quiet, holding hands. The jungle was still. The sky was clear. The war was over, but the bond between them wasn't. Dean looked at her. "What now?" Talira smiled. Now, we rebuild, together. And high above them, somewhere deep in space, 1,000 old beacons flickered back to life, responding to the signal that had awakened them. Galaxy had felt their bond, and it would never be the same again. The battlefield had turned quiet. No more weapons. No more screeching scythers. The jungle, once burning and loud, now whispered with soft winds and the sound of distant water. Ash floated like snow. Birds slowly returned to the trees, cautious, but curious. Dean sat on the broken steps of the sanctuary, elbows resting on his knees, looking out over the valley that had nearly killed him. He was breathing slow. Every muscle ached, but for once, it wasn't from fear. Behind him, Talira knelt near a large root, speaking in soft words to the sanctuary systems. The machines responded to her now like an old friend, slow, kind, and alive. "You still talking to the building?" Dean called. She glanced over her shoulder, smiling. "Not the building. The core. It's learning. It wants to help again." Dean leaned back. "You mean it wants to help us?" She walked toward him, sitting beside him quietly. "It says the war broke more than bones. It broke trust across many worlds. But the bond we made woke something that was sleeping. The alliance. The old promise." Dean looked down at his hands. "You think they'll come back? The other species? The ones who helped build all this?" She nodded. "Now that the core signaled them, they will return. But it may take time." Dean was quiet for a moment, then said, "Will they accept me?" Talira reached over and touched his arm gently. "They will. Because you are proof that humans can do more than survive. You can feel. You can forgive. You can choose connection over control." He looked at her, eyes soft. "You sure about that?" She tilted her head, teasing. "You kissed me twice and didn't run screaming." "That makes you pretty rare," Dean chuckled. "You started it." They sat for a while, watching the sun rise over the distant ridge. For a moment, the world felt untouched, peaceful, like it could begin again. Then from the edge of the jungle, movement. Dean stood fast, tense. But it wasn't an army. It was a group of survivors, half Varelian, half human. Wounded, cautious but not attacking, Talira stood beside him. "They're coming to the signal. They must have felt it." "Seen the light?" Dean nodded. "Refugees? Maybe," she said. "Or maybe they just want to know what happened here." Dean walked down the steps to greet them. A human woman with a torn uniform stepped forward. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "You were the one in the light," she whispered. "You stopped the warship." Dean looked back at Talira. "Not alone." The Varelian beside the woman stepped forward, hands raised. "No weapons." Talira approached carefully. "You're not with Korix?" The Varelian shook his head. "No. He abandoned us, many of us, but we felt the pulse. It reached us deep in the forest." Dean looked around. There were children among them, elderly. Some limping, some carried on stretchers. Not warriors, survivors. He turned to Talira. "We can't just guard this place." "No," she said. "We have to share it." And so they opened the sanctuary, not as a fortress, but as a refuge. The machines began to rebuild parts of the ruins into shelters. The core lowered its energy to warm the surrounding lands. Clean water flowed again. Food grew faster under the light. Within days, more arrived. Humans who had crash-landed or escaped the front lines. Varelians who had turned against the war. Others too, smaller alien species Dean didn't even recognize. The sanctuary welcomed all of them. Dean became more than a soldier. He became a bridge. Talira became more than a healer. She became a leader, but through it all, they stayed side by side. Even as the crowd grew, even as news spread to other stars, they always found a quiet moment for each other, just to breathe. To talk, to laugh. One evening, under the glowing sky, Dean sat with Talira near the sanctuary garden. "Back on Earth," he said. "People would call this a miracle. She smiled. On my world, they'd call it a myth. He reached out, brushing her silver hair from her face. I call it you. She blushed softly, her glow deepening. Still using your mouth to surprise me, I see. He leaned closer. You still want me to stop? She shook her head. Never again. Their lips met this time with no pain, no urgency, just quiet trust. And far above, drifting silently in the stars, old satellites blinked awake. Ancient records began syncing again. Messages long forgotten began to play once more. And in one dark corner of the galaxy, a council that had not spoken in centuries opened its eyes, because a human kissed a girl who was never meant to love him, and together, they reminded the universe what it meant to feel.